Hello everyone, my name is Sneha and I welcome you all to day 2 of the Asian Financial Services Congress with an exciting and engaging discussion on banking on AI, acing your AI success with enterprise strategy. Now, as we were designing the agenda for this session, it was apparent that AI has been the shiny new thing for many financial services institutions in Asia Pacific. We have seen remarkable use cases and experiments around customer experience, personalization, credit scoring and decisioning, marketing, fraud and risk management, security, operations, and sustainability and ESG, and the list goes on. Now, IDC estimates that the financial services spending on AI in Asia Pacific will reach close to $6.5 billion by 2025 at a CAGR of 22.5%. Now, despite this considerable scale of investments, when we deep dive into the AI maturity of many institutions in the region, the depth of scalable and sustainable progress is still low compared to that in the US and other more mature regions. Moreover, many institutions have missed the mark, or it has taken them too long to realize the day-to-day application of AI for these functions and use cases. Now, how can we change this predicament? We have an expert, Alex Hubert, joining us today to answer this exact question. Now, Alex is Vice President of Solution Engineering for Dataiku in APAC. He works with Fortune 1000 companies to define their vision for AI at scale. Using his past experience as a lead data scientist, he helps to identify and remove blocking points in implementing the most business transformative use cases. Welcome, Alex.
Thank you very much for having me.
We have a lot to discuss today, and so without further ado, let me jump right in and ask you this, Alex. Now, delivering intelligent banking and insurance has become a North Star for many institutions in Asia Pacific. Whilst many have already started investing, there are still few who are sitting on the fence. Now, you have been talking to so many clients who have not only started, but progressed successfully on this journey. Could you throw some light on how some of these marquee customers have been improving their customer experience, their employee experience, and operations with AI?
Yeah, sure. And I will start by quoting Jeff McMillan, who's the CDO of Morgan Stanley, and who was giving a speech at our ECC conference in 2019 in New York, where it was critical for him to realign all the different stakeholders towards a business objective. You don't just do AI for the sake of doing AI. It's like 20 years ago, you wouldn't say, I'm doing internet. You're doing internet to deliver some value to your customer. You build a machine learning model, you build an artificial intelligence model to deliver some value to your customers, whether they're internal and whether they're external as well. So ultimately realigning all those different stakeholders from the business, the data analytics team, obviously the data scientist, and the IT organization towards that common objective is absolutely critical. And I insist on this. All of those different stakeholders have different KPIs, that's fine, but it has to become a North Star, as you just said, for them to focus on the customer experience, because at the end of the day, that's what is going to deliver value and drive customer satisfaction through the use of AI. I was reading that statistics the other day, where about, I think, 80% of banks right now have fully finished their transition towards digital product, especially in the retail space, more and more in the wealth management space, but they still fail to monetize properly those digital assets. And why is that? It's once again because not everyone internally is building AI to make sure that the value delivered to the customer is going to be optimal. A big topic right now in the banking world and overall in the AI space is the AI UX crossover and cross sections that you need to happen to make sure that a use case is going to be properly embedded into a digital solution so that it delivers value fully to the customer, that it drives the customer experience up, and then ultimately that you fully manage to monetize it as an actual product offering within your product. And to do that, well, it's absolutely critical to realign all those different teams. So breaking the silos between the data scientists, the business, and obviously IT, making sure that the access to data and technology is overall much easier than what it is right now. And that goes in line with rethinking the different internal governance framework that you have that sometimes can impede a faster innovation.
Well said, Alex, and I agree with you. Just because you can do AI doesn't mean that you should actually do it. Now, we have seen exceptional benefits when organizations take a long-term strategic mindset on AI. Moreover, the use cases and the exceptional values are well recognized. But some deep organizations' challenges are still in the way. Enlighten us, Alex, what are these challenges?
Yeah, it's pretty much related to the question you asked before and how I was answering it. Ultimately, if you want to be able to deliver a lot of value through AI to your different customers, whether it's internal or external, you have to realign all of those stakeholders. So it starts with the people, and when you come with people, well, obviously, you're going to have a lot of key challenges that you're going to face. One of the key challenges, for instance, is how do you make sure that you retain talent? How do you make sure that you attract the top data scientists available in the market right now, that they become interested in the business, that they stay, and that they don't change every 2-3 years? How do you make sure that people that have been in the organization for potentially 20 years don't feel left out because they don't necessarily know how to code in Python, yet they know really well all those different data sets, all the different pitfalls to avoid to deliver value with data within the organization? And overall, it's true that you have a conflict of generation, potentially conflict in skill set also when you start talking about people. And you have to tackle that challenge of making sure that everyone goes into the same direction and to a certain extent avoid that blaming culture. Like, for instance, the business might say, the data scientist didn't understand my problem, and ultimately that's the reason why the use case isn't good at the end of the day. Or the data scientist might say, well, I built an amazing model, but IT is taking a hell lot of the time, and ultimately that doesn't deliver value into production. So making sure that the people sphere is realigned, and that's a key challenge. It's not something easy to do. That's one thing. The technology as well. We're definitely into a very fast-paced changing environment when it comes to technology. 10 years ago, everybody was transitioning to Hadoop. Now you have to incorporate the cloud into your technological strategy. It means that a lot of those Hadoop clusters haven't even started delivering value for those organizations. You have to potentially throw them away. So that's a lot of headache for CEOs. I think 81% of CEOs were telling us this year that they're concerned about the pace at which technology is changing. And then finally, opening data, because you have a regulatory framework, especially in banking, that can be quite heavy for obvious reasons. But if you want to foster innovation and make sure that you can keep compete with startups, fintech, insurtech, you want to open data as much as possible. You want to open technology as much as possible to people. But at the same time, you want to stay within the right regulatory framework, the right internal governance framework to avoid catastrophe like data leakage that can have terrible consequences from a branding reputation perspective.
It is very illuminating, Alex, and you talked about a lot of things. You talked about people, data, and I want to dig deeper into data first. Now, data is still stuck in silos, and we need to make sure that the data readiness hits the mark. Now, based on your experience, how crucial it is to build a data-driven culture to deliver sustainable innovation at scale?
It's absolutely critical, and let me give you an example here of a customer of us in EMEA, Rabobank. So they came to us 4 or 5 years ago with a central AI team, and they switched to an hub and spoke model, basically to allow analytics team to be much closer to the BU. And let's see why. Before, when they had the center of excellence, they had control over the use cases. Essentially, you were hiring amazing data scientists, so the level of innovation and AI innovation within the COE was great. And the collaboration between the data scientists was on par, but that was at the cost of excluding the rest of the organization from innovation in itself, and that was creating some friction between the business, who were expecting use cases that was not exactly what they're expecting, what was delivered by the COE. So you had that disconnect between the value delivered to the customers, what the COE was building, slower time to value, slower time to market, and ultimately these people are really good technically speaking, so they were also doing a lot of shadow IT, which is a big problem in organization. When they switch to the hub and spoke model, obviously it's harder to coordinate all those different analytics teams disseminated into little BUs, that's fine. But ultimately, they had a high specialization and productivity of all those BUs because those use cases were ideated by the business, close to data scientists sitting in the business. And that back and forth, that friction that I was highlighting before, all of a sudden disappeared. You had a better usage of the different pool of data available within the organization. That was increasing the quality, the overall quality of project, and once again the customer satisfaction when it came to AI. And switching to this, really that's where they unlocked a lot of value. Because right now, I think last year they were delivering something like 100 different machine learning model at scale within the organization, all productionized. So that's realigning all those different expectations is really what helped them to move forward and what propelled them forward. Yeah.
I'm sure it is, and you talked about people as well earlier, and I see important role played by people here as well. Now, investing in people is crucial to the success of AI-driven transformation. Now, we would agree that we need to work with identifying executive champions, democratizing skills, hiring the right talent, and utilizing specialized tools and solutions. Now, there is so much that needs to be done, and at times it can be daunting. In your view, how should an organization manage its AI talent?
Yeah, it's a key problem, and it's not difficult. It's not easy to solve it. Early in the 2010, especially after Harvard said that the data scientist was the sexiest job in the century, everybody jumped on data scientists, and we work with that bank that just did that. They hired a lot of data scientists, but they realized that it was very complicated to, first of all, retain them, that they were expensive. So when you try so hard to attract someone in your organization and they left after 6 months or a year to go to a startup that has better data, better technology, and a better salary, it's a lot of investment on your side that just goes into smoke. So the switch that organization made ultimately was to upskill and invest a lot of money on their current workforce, because ultimately the real assets that banks and financial institutions overall have, obviously it's data, obviously it's technology, but first and foremost, once again, it's the people. It's the people that have been working there for 20 years, that know the data sets, know the pitfalls, know the customers' expectations, know the business. What they don't necessarily have right now is the skill set to work with big data. So we need to invest to upskill these people. We need to retool them to make sure that they can work with bigger data sets. And all of a sudden now they're equipped to, again, deliver value to the organization and deliver use cases that are going to optimize the customer experience, whether it's internal or external, once again. So by investing in technology and upskilling the current workforce that you have, you ultimately help again yourself to move forward and accelerate your path towards enterprise AI.
Now, that's very helpful, very insightful, Alex. Now, since we are on the topic of people, we must talk about citizen development. Now, one of many Dataiku blogs also underscores that you won't scale AI without enlisting non-experts to the cause. Now, here is an intriguing question. How will empowering and equipping citizen developers with the right tool help these organizations at a profound level?
Yeah, I mean, it's our new tagline, right? Without you, it's just data. Ultimately, it is the people that are passionate about the business and creating value to the customers that will drive innovation the furthest. And very often you realize that those people have been sitting in the organization for 5, 10, 15 years, and as I was saying earlier on, the job has changed, obviously, but it has changed mainly because the volumetry of data has dramatically increased, and they need new tools to do this, they need new processes to do this, they need new framework, and they need an easier access to those data sets. You don't necessarily need to have people, expert data scientists, to really get into the topic of driving high value for the organization. Let me give you a very precise example. We work with Standard Chartered here in Singapore, and by equipping better their workforce, they realized that for a bunch of use cases related to finance, only 3 specialists could do the job of about 15 people with the right tool, the right framework, and the right processes in place. And obviously right now you unlock a lot of value because you have a lot of free time for those people to focus on something else, on other type of use cases, and accelerate once again on the enterprise AI path.
Very, very well said, Alex. I couldn't agree more with you there. And now a question around business processes. Now, I would be remiss if I did not ask you this question on business processes. You and I are both aligned well on the disruptive leap that can be achieved with the right processes.
Yep.
I would like to dig deeper here and understand from you, why do we need data ops and ML ops to scale model production?
Well, ultimately, a machine learning model is only useful when it can deliver value continuously and autonomously to the organization. I'm going to give you an example, a bad example that I like to give very often. I went a couple of years ago to a bank in Hong Kong, and I was sitting down with a very smart data scientist. He had built that amazing model in his Jupyter notebook. They were basically trying to get an idea of how much a customer who didn't have his main source of income at the bank was overall making, because then they could target these people with the right marketing campaign, making better recommendations. So it was quite critical to have an idea of how much money all those individuals were making. Amazing models, and I asked him, so now how do you go with that model? And he was telling me that, for production, basically, he was expecting every week a new CSV extract from the marketing team, that he had to tweak a little bit his model every week, making sure that the CSV extract was clean as well, and then do the scoring, and hopefully with no bug. That would take him about a day and a half of work. You cannot scale with something like this. Because otherwise, what's your solution? You're not going to hire 100 data scientists and just give them one model. If you have 1,000 models, it just simply doesn't work. What if that individual is sick? What if that individual is on leave? What if that individual is simply leaving the organization? How do you keep delivering value for your customers, external, internal, with all those hiccups? So ultimately, making sure that you have the right frameworks around data ops. If the data are changing, is my model going to stay the same? If I deploy my model into production, is it going to drift? Especially with all those new regulatory framework, I want to make sure that my model isn't biased towards a very specific type of population, towards a specific gender. I want to be able to answer any question that the regulator might ask. Why did you come up with such a prediction in that specific instance? In that case, I need to save all the data that I use to build the model, to make the scoring, and obviously continuous integration. We generate so much data that model needs to be retrained over time, especially when it comes to the banking and AI world. You have a bunch of use cases in marketing, and making sure that you use the freshest level of data is absolutely critical. So if you ignore that, you just simply cannot scale. It doesn't work.
And we are talking about AI at scale today. So very well said, Alex here. Now, I have been literally sitting at the edge of my chair to ask you this question on behalf of our audience from financial services. How to build an intelligent organization in line with the regulation, enhance internal governance, while at the same time increasing the velocity of project ideation to deployment?
Yeah, it's the $1 million question, right? But ultimately, we've seen amazing results when you manage to realign the different stakeholders at the core of what they do in the right governance framework, in the right AI framework to design something from an idea to its monitoring into production. The business teams needs to be much closer to the analytics team. The analytics team, data science team needs to work much closer to the deployment team. The validation committee has to be involved in the process as much as possible. Something that was quite interesting when we talked to our different customers is on the IT side, they end up telling us from the data preparation to building a machine learning model, we have to deal with 5 or 6 different tools on average. Ultimately, your question is linked to scale. When you have to make 5 or 6 different tools talk to one another to ultimately try to deliver value, that makes it super complicated to monitor into production because you have to build that glue between all those different systems. It's quite complicated to make sure that the original business statement is going to live the right way in 5 or 6 different systems. You have to rationalize that as much as possible, and that common framework between those different teams is usually what helps you to deliver value at scale through the use of AI.
And I'm sure it has piqued the curiosity of many decision makers here today. Now, our session is under the Cloud Framework track, and in his speech yesterday, Michael also accentuated that the banks and insurers in the future will be characterized by extensive usage of cloud-centric technologies and environments and ubiquitous infrastructure. Alex, bring it home by answering my last question. How pertinent is the cloud for an enterprise AI strategy? And how have you seen financial services who have always been cautious for myriad reasons about the cloud in not so distant past are now willing to make cloud their predominant deployment model choice?
Yeah, the cloud is an interesting topic for the banking world. Ultimately, if you want to process data at scale, what we have learned the past decade is managing your own infrastructure is extremely costful. It's not fault tolerant. You're basically going to manage your own IT organization and therefore decorrelate yourself from the business. Moving into the cloud solves that issue, but that comes with risk around data leakage, usage of personal data, and all the regulatory framework that's going to be around this. So you have to take those questions very seriously. Now, the future is definitely into the cloud. I think the different financial services and financial organizations that we're working with have understood it from a scale perspective. It's from a security perspective as well. They start to realize that it's actually safe and probably safer to have their data in the cloud. So you have to consider it, and organizations are going into that direction. I've worked with a big insurance in the UK a couple of years ago that did their whole transition into the cloud, and ultimately they managed to deliver better use cases because they could use bigger amount of data. But what's truly at stake when you start to put data in the cloud is the computation at scale is now open not to a few, but to a lot of people within the organization. Once again, you have to rethink all your framework internally to make sure that people have the right access within the right internal governance framework. But if you manage to do this, it's a lot of value ultimately for the organization. I was reading, I think a couple of days ago, the use case from TNX, a Vietnam bank, switching completely to AWS, and that's truly what's at stake. Being able to compute massive data set at scale, being able to open all those data sets to all of the organization, and when you have 80% of your workforce solving those AI problems for the customers, that's the right way to do. When you have only 1 or 2% of the people trying to build AI, just purely from a sheer scales perspective, it's going to be hard for you to compete.
Yeah. Well, we have a lot of insights today on how we can secure exceptional benefits from AI in all realms of business, implement the most relevant use cases, and proactively resolve the pain points that stand in our way today. Most importantly, learning from the leading enterprise implementations such as Morgan Stanley, Standard Chartered, and Aviva. Now, to conclude this dialogue, I would like to add that there is no better time than 2022 for the institutions to step up their game and create a momentum to move beyond the experiments and early stages of AI use to a more concerted enterprise strategy with enterprise analytics and AI platform that augments your capabilities in data, people, process, and technology. With this, I thank you, Alex, for sharing your insights and experience.
Thank you again for having me.